The story begins with a pastry tournament, where the greatest pastries in the world created exquisite sweets. Among them there was a pastry chef who crafted majestic-looking treats with his exceptional skills, and was sure to win the grand title. His goal is to make a land of sweets, where the whole world can taste his desserts. However, when he attempted to present his finished pieces to the judges, there was an accident, and one of his own creations fell on top of him, and his life was cut short. But his desire to give the whole world diabetes was so strong that God chose to isekai him to a new world. He was granted a new life as a baby boy named Pastry Mille Morteln, son of a noble general Casserole Mille Morteln. When he became the lord of the territory, it was a barren land, but with his hard work he cultivated the land alongside the villagers. After 20 years now they have 3 villages with 40 people in each, and now they are capable of growing both wheat and barley. As he grew, Pastry was raised by his father with the goal of becoming a great military hero. He has 5 older sisters, and a kind mother. It's been 9 years since Pastry was born, and we see him receiving sword training from his father. Although he tried to dodge his father's attacks during their training sessions, he couldn't help but daydream about creating sweets. His distraction led to his defeat in the practice match. Following this, the head retainer, Fief, appears to inform them that breakfast is ready. He then shares the news that the bean field is expected to yield a significant harvest, thanks to Pastry's advice. However, he also brings worrying news that 50 bandits have escaped and are heading toward their property. They are expected to arrive in 2 months. Knowing that his father's forces will be insufficient to win the battle, Pastry is worried. This situation could lead to the destruction of their bean fields, along with the wheat they produce, jeopardizing his dream of creating a land of sweets. Fief suggests that Pastry undergo a sanctification ceremony which grants the individual a unique magic ability. During breakfast, Cass informs about Pastry undergoing the ceremony to his wife, Agnes, and his daughter, Josephine. Agnes is worried as the ceremony is usually for adults, and she wished for more time with her son as a child. Cass tells them they will leave in 3 days, and she can do anything with him in the meantime. We then learn that Pastry's mother and sister have the hobby of cross-dressing him as a girl. Since they have only 3 more days left, they are trying to make the most out of it, while Pastry can't wait to undergo the ceremony. The day of their departure arrives, and Pastry is already exhausted from being used as a dress-up doll by his mother and sister. Agnes wishes her son to have fun and take care of himself, and his friends bid him farewell, wishing him good luck. However, all Pastry could think about was eating a lot of sweets in town. Cass then uses his ability to teleport them to the capital. Pastry notices that there are a lot of things here that he has never seen before, and thinks that he can make a lot of different kinds of sweets with these. His father promises to buy him anything he likes if he successfully completes the sanctification ceremony. He looks around, and sees the apple, known as bonka in the isekai world. He expresses his desire to grow them on the field, and Cass thinks he's already getting the instinct of a true lord. But Pastry's plan is to use them to make different types of desserts like tarts, baked apples, and apple pie. As his father dreams to build a land with a strong army, Pastry wishes to build a land of sweets. Afterward, they meet a panda-like priest, who is surprised about Pastry undergoing the ceremony at such a young age. Meanwhile, we see Josie is worried about her brother, as when she went for the ceremony last time, she was told that she had no magic power. After that, we see Pastry all tied up, and wonder if the priest is into bondage plays. It's revealed that, in order to draw out one's magic, the person has to be confined in darkness, without seeing or hearing anything. More than a day passes, and Cass grows concerned because the expected magic awakening has not occurred. Pastry, on the other hand, spent his time dreaming about making delicious sweets. During his dream, he opens a door and awakens his magic. We then see Cass waking up Pastry, and it's been 2 days. The priest brings a scripture to bless him, and as he chants his prayers, Pastry sees the magic light from the scripture being absorbed into him. Both Cass and Priest are amazed by the magic light being absorbed by Pastry. Priest remarks that he has acquired the power that no one has heard to this day. Cass then gives some donations to the priests, and takes Pastry to buy the bonkas. Meanwhile, the stingy priest is not happy with the donation, as it was all silver coins, and mentions that this won't be enough to keep him quiet. Later we see Pastry enjoying the bonkas, and he hopes to build his land of sweets, and make Big Mom proud. Afterward, we witness a village coming under attack by bandits, with plans to target Pastry's village next. In Pastry's village, the villagers are constructing a defensive wall in anticipation of the bandits' arrival. Fuel reports the bandit attack on a nearby village to Cass, which shocks him. He realizes that at this rate, the bandits will reach their village much sooner than the estimated 2 months. Cass then assigns Pastry the task of reporting the situation to the leaders of each village. Within the village, the residents are busy preparing their defense line. Cass assesses the situation, and decides to seal off the smaller towns. The people from the sealed villages are relocated to the main one, and they plan to lure the bandits to a specific location. Pastry analyzes the situation and realizes that the majority of the fighters are ordinary villagers. Pastry's friends, Lumi and Mark, arrive offering their assistance, and express their desire to become his future retainers. Pastry assigns them the task of gathering rocks from outside the village. During this time, Lumi asks Mark if he knows about Pastry's magic, to which he tells her that he doesn't know because Pastry has been practicing his magic alone. They gathered many rocks until evening, but then they spotted the bandits approaching and rushed back to the village to warn everyone. Marcus's father instructed the kids to remain with Pastry. Meanwhile, Pastry was with his family, but the villagers were frightened. Cass and Fuel managed to calm the villagers and motivated them to prepare for battle. Fuel and Cass discussed their plan, and Cass believed the attack would happen that night, so they needed to be ready. However, Fuel mentioned that if the bandit attack occurred in the morning, the villagers would be exhausted if they stayed up all night. They asked for Pastry's opinion, and he suggested determining the extent of the enemy's supplies and forces. Pastry realized that this was similar to making sweets, where he would need to know the quantity of his ingredients beforehand, and starts getting lost in his thoughts of making a cream pie, but manages to refocus. Following this, his father decides to gather more information by conducting a hit-and-run operation on the bandits, taking Fuel with him. He placed Pastry in charge and left. Pastry was determined to help his father and devise countermeasures against the enemies. He plans to prepare some fire arrows to provide cover for his father during the attack. Lumi expressed concern that the arrows might accidentally hit his father, but Pastry was confident that his father could dodge them. We then see 2 little girls are frightened by the bandit attack, but Josie and Agnes calm them down. Agnes wishes her son good luck and advises him to take care of himself. Afterward, Pastry planned his counterattack to support his father in battle. Meanwhile, we see Fuel using his ability, and activating his magical eye to locate the bandits. He reported that there were about 70 of them, with a few appearing to be trained cavalrymen. They possessed 5 horses and had also captured individuals from the previous village, whom they intended to use for the slave trade. We then see the leader of the bandits receiving a report about the village. Suddenly, Cass and Fuel appeared and launched an attack on the bandit group, inflicting injuries on many of them. The bandit boss believed that they were dealing with trained riders and advised his men to be cautious. Cass and Fuel then attempted to retreat while luring the bandits. The bandit boss tried to stop them, but they successfully led the bandits into a trap and started heading toward the village. One of the watchmen heard the sound of the horses, and fired an arrow into the sky to alert others. Cass understood that Pastry had provided the idea of using a fire arrow to guide him home. Meanwhile, Pastry received a report that his father was being pursued by the bandits. He ordered his friends to prepare to attack the bandits. Cass and Fuel led the bandits toward the village, while Pastry signaled to start the attack. They managed to injure many of the enemies. Pastry ordered another attack, and the kids threw rocks at the bandits. We learned that before the battle, Pastry had explained his strategy to the villagers. The adults initially had doubts about whether the kids could execute the plan, but Pastry managed to convince all the villagers of its advantages. In the present, Pastry supported his father, and Fuel was impressed by his tactics. The bandits struggled in the battle, but their leader didn't give up. He jumped over the river and made his way to the village, with his men following him. He managed to climb up the wall. He then attacked many villagers and threatened to kill them all. The knights of Pastry's family fought against the bandits, and suddenly, the village kids also joined the battle. The bandit boss became angry and targeted the kids. Just as he was about to attack a boy, Pastry saved the boy but got injured in the process. The bandit boss took him as a hostage. However, Pastry had a unique spell that allowed him to transfer the pain of an injured man to the bandits, including their boss. The bandit boss's face was burned, and he was shocked to learn that Pastry was a magic user. The next morning, Agnes received the report that they had won the battle, but Pastry had sustained an injury to his arm. She gets worried, but Josie and the villager assure her that it was just a scratch. Then, we see Pastry distribute food to the villagers. Later, the bandits were apprehended, and they plan to hand them over to Countess Reedes. Fuel hopes to get a good reward, and Cass mentions that it will depend on the negotiation, but he hopes that she covers at least the cost of the war. Following this, Cass rewards the villager, Glakage, for his significant contribution to frontline defense. He also awards Mark and Lumi for assisting Pastry. As they carry out their reward food they were given, Pastry also assists them and expresses his happiness at having them as friends. Afterward, they carried the reward to Mark's home. His mother didn't care about the reward, she was just happy that her son had returned home safely. She also inquired if Mark had caused any trouble for Pastry, but he replied that both his best friends had been a tremendous support in the fight. Later, Lumi's grandpa was delighted to hear about his grandchild's great work. However, many villagers wanted to celebrate with Lumi's family and invited Pastry as well. Mark asked if they are allowed to drink, but since they are kids, they only allowed them to have milk. They celebrated the victory together, and all the villagers praised the children's courage. Suddenly, Pastry started daydreaming because he was planning to bake sweets with the delicious ingredients from his village. Meanwhile, his friends sneak outside to play. Then, Mark gets a stupid idea to visit the arrested bandits because they both aspired to become Pastry's future retainers. They requested to see the bandits, but the guardians instructed the children to play in another area. But the cocky brat still didn't give up, he hid with Lumina behind a bush, and threw rocks to distract the guardians. They both entered the barn, intending to witness the situation of the bandits. The bandit boss noticed his sword on Mark, and devised a plan. He informs him that his sword is special, and with a spell he can use its magic. Since he's facing execution, he wants to tell Mark the secret spell, and asks to come closer. Although Lumi warns him not to go, Mark, being the greedy idiot, goes up to him. As a result, the bandit boss managed to free himself, and launched an attack on Lumi. Mark is worried as Lumina got badly injured. Then, a guardian appeared, and the bandit boss used Mark as his hostage. Another guardian reports to Lumi's grandpa and Pastry that the bandit boss had freed himself. Meanwhile, the bandit boss is surrounded by many retainers, but he manages to escape, using Mark as his hostage. Pastry arrives, and sees Lumi injured. He instructs a guardian to tend to her wounds, while he attempts to rescue Mark. Pastry then follows them on a horse, and devises a strategy to defeat the bandit boss. Meanwhile, his father is shocked to hear that Pastry went alone, and wants to go after him. But Fuel stops him, and insists on going for the rescue. He tells Cass that if villagers knew about this they would panic, so he should remain here to protect the village as its lord. After that, we see the bandit boss and his stolen horse tripping, followed by Pastry arriving in the nick of time, ready for battle. The bandit boss was enraged, knowing that Pastry had set up this apparent trap. They engage in a sword fight, and Pastry recalls his father's advice to grip his sword tightly. Although Pastry is able to block some attacks, he's getting overwhelmed by the bandit's strength. Mark asks Pastry to run away, but he refuses, vowing never to abandon his underlings. The bandit boss then attacks Pastry, breaking his sword in half. The scene then cuts to Fuel, who attempts to locate the boys but is unable to find them. Later, he discovered Pastry's broken sword and believed that Pastry had been killed by the bandit. In the evening, Fuel entered Pastry's home, and was shocked to see Pastry alive. Cass informed Fuel that he and Mark had just returned home. Fuel asks how they never saw him return, when they were the ones who were coming after them. Cass asked his son to explain himself, and Pastry reveals that he had recently replicated his father's magic ability, allowing him to escape safely with Mark. After the incident, Pastry was forbidden from disclosing his magical power to replicate someone else's abilities. However, he was scolded because the ability is new to him, and he could have got teleported inside a rock or deep under the ground. At night, Cass was worried, knowing his son possessed an overpowered magic ability, and may be targeted as a human weapon if his ability is known. In the following days, Mark felt remorseful, recognizing that the incident was his fault. Pastry managed to cheer up his friend and assured him that Lumi would be happy to see both of them. So, they visited Lumi, who was overjoyed to reunite with her best friends. Afterward, Pastry went to the kitchen, excited to bake delicious sweets and bring smiles to people's faces. He began mixing the ingredients, aiming to make something special. Meanwhile, Mark is concerned about whether Lumina had forgiven him for his stupid idea. Mark expressed his apologies, but Lumina wasn't upset with him. She assured him that there was no need to apologize, and they noticed the nice aroma of the pie. Pastry bakes a delicious bonka pie, and serves it to his friends. They found it to be very tasty, but they feel that the honey pickled is so sour. He explains that there are both sweet and sour bonka fruit, and it's the skill of the chef to maintain the right balance. It's the same with people, and asks Mark to reflect on his shortcomings and work harder. Suddenly, Lumi's father, Glakeage, appeared behind Pastry, causing Mark to feel alarmed. However, he isn't angry. Instead, he wants him to marry his daughter as compensation. Lumi also agreed with this decision, and Pastry wonders, when will his harem start? Following this, Lumina offered her father a slice of the bonka pie, and took Mark's share as well, stating that the husband's share belonged to his wife. Poor Guy learns how marriage works, and Pastry is glad that he's still single. Meanwhile, we see the Countess Redes finds out that the bandits were defeated, and thinks that dealing with this could be troublesome. A few weeks later, Cass informed Fuel that they were facing financial troubles. The battle against the bandits had depleted their funds as they used the money to rebuild the villages, and securing food for the villagers so that they can get through the upcoming winter. Cass was concerned, especially because the bandit boss had escaped, and Fuel mentions that the bandit boss's capture would have fetched them a reward of 200 gold coins, also no one was willing to lend them money due to the upcoming winter. Cass thinks about lending it from the royal court's treasure, but Fuel is against it due to the high interest. Pastry wonders why his father didn't seek help from his own parents. He then learns that his father was a true Romeo, and eloped with his mother when their parents didn't accept their relationship. This is why they couldn't turn to Pastry's grandparents for assistance. Following this, Mark and Lumi learned about the financial troubles. Pastry inquired about Lumi's recovery, and she mentioned that she was healing well but still experienced some pain. Mark tries to comfort Lumi, and Pastry asks him to stop flirting, and Mark tells he's jealous because he's still single. Mark then suggests expanding their farmland as a solution to their money problem, but Pastry mentions that it would require both time and money. Lumi suggests selling Pastry's bonka pies. Although Pastry loves the idea, he thinks that they would have to make a lot of pies to generate any profits. Mark then proposes that Pastry should teach magic, but Lumi mocks him, saying that even if he learns it, he would never be able to use it properly because he is a dumbass. Lumi believes that using magic is not a bad idea, so she asks Pastry to demonstrate some magic for inspiration. He recalls brainstorming sweet-making ideas with his friends in his previous life. Pastry then requests Lumi and Mark to sketch pictures in the dirt. They both draw images in the soil, leading to a lover's quarrel. Subsequently, Pastry employs his magic to tattoo their drawings onto their hands, but it's temporary and will fade in 2 days. Lumi then suggests that he copy something else directly instead of their drawings, sparking an idea for Pastry. After that we see Cass asking Agnes to seek help from her parents, but she thinks it will be too difficult. Just then Pastry arrives with his plan. He reminds Cass about his sister Josie's marriage, and tells him that for her marriage proposals Cass has to introduce her physically everywhere. But Pastry shows his magic, and copies his mother's image onto a blank wood. He tells Cass, instead of bringing his daughter Josie to every meeting, he can use this picture. Basically, Pastry's idea is to make parents a marriage broker by carrying a picture of their child instead of actually bringing them, and Cass is impressed by this idea of selling the picture to the nobles. They worry about exposing Pastry's magic, but he mentions that they can tell everyone that his magic ability is to make photos, and use this as a cover to hide his actual ability. Agnes then approaches Pastry to do some touch-up on her portrait to remove the wrinkles, and looks like Pastry will have to use his magic for Photoshop as well. After some days, Pastry and his father visited Countess Retesh to seek compensation for the damages incurred during the bandit battle. Retesh had already expected their visit and planned to smoothly send him away. Pastry and his dad entered the room, and she greeted them, introducing herself to Pastry. Pastry remembered his dad informing him that Retesh is the current owner of the land, as her predecessors died in conflict. She then invited them for tea, and Cass praised the flavor and aroma of the tea. Pastry was excited to have a cookie, however, it wasn't up to his standard. Retesh complimented Cass for managing his land, but he credited it to Pastry. As she complimented Pastry, he took this opportunity to shift the conversation to the bandit attacks. Retesh initially tried to escape the situation by feigning ignorance, but Pastry outsmarted her and told her that they were ready to hand over the bandits to the king. They also showed a sword with her family crest, which was carried by one of the bandits, and Retesh realized that she was trapped. Pastry mentioned that since they couldn't stop the bandits destroyed Pastry's land, and now they need compensation. She offered 100 gold coins as compensation, but Pastry negotiated further and settled on 150 gold coins. Although Retesh is a bit annoyed, she thinks that Pastry is an exceptional boy. She then asks him about his weird reaction to tasting her cookies, and he starts giving advice on preparing the cookie, and goes on about it, only to be stopped by his father. After that, Pastry copies Retesh's face on a scarf and presents it as a gift. In the following weeks, we see Pastry and his dad invited to a banquet by Duke Cattlesec, who is also the central military commander. Cass congratulates him on his grandson's coming of age. The Duke introduces his grandson, Squale, who graduated from the military boarding school as the top of his class. Squale greets Cass but is very nervous because he admires warriors and was looking forward to meeting Cass, who is widely popular among youngsters due to his deeds. Following this, Pastry introduced himself and managed to impress the Duke with his good manners. He also wished Squale well, who was still nervous. The Duke mentions that Pastry is more dependable than his grandson and asks Pastry about his coming of age, as he had heard that Pastry has acquired magic ability. Pastry confirms this, and the Duke asks him to demonstrate his magic. Pastry then uses his copy magic to create a print of a girl on the cloth, and everyone is impressed by the magic. Pastry then mentions it as a gift for Squale from him and the Margrave of Huberek. They learn that the girl is Lady Petra, the third daughter of Lord Huberek. Pastry and his dad had visited Huberek before coming there, and they had asked them to introduce their daughter to them. Squale seems love-struck by seeing the beauty of Petra, and Pastry mentions that she will be celebrating her coming of age next month. He invites Squale, and before the Duke could say anything, Squale accepts it. Duke thinks that Squale answered without considering his position and fell for their marriage plan. He thinks that Pastry is not an ordinary boy and shouldn't be underestimated. Duke mentions that it will be trouble for Squale to go to their territory, but Pastry proposes using his dad's magic for teleportation. Squale is happy about it and immediately agrees, much to the Duke's dismay. After that, Pastry whispered secretly to the Duke about Lord Huberic's ulterior motives. Pastry explained to him that he believes Lord Huberic planned to use their military power to end the long years of conflict, and for this reason, he may have wished to join his daughter with the Duke's grandson. The Duke thanked Pastry for the info and decided to join the celebration. Pastry was happy that his plan worked, and Duke trusted Cass to assist them during their travel. Later, Squale asked Pastry about what Lady Petra likes, and Pastry mentioned that even though he doesn't know her taste, the last time he presented her with baked sweets. Squale then asked if he could fulfill his request, and Pastry was excited as he thought he was about to get an order for making sweets. Unfortunately, the perv lord wants the lolly girl's image to be more erotic, which he probably plans to use later to build his forearm muscles, and Pastry thinks that men will be men, regardless of the world. A few days later, we see how the citizens repaired the broken buildings. Fuel mentions that the provision of food and firewood among the citizens is going smoothly, and all expenses are handled by the Morteln family. Fuel asks if it's necessary to spend so much money, to which Cass mentions that as a leader, he can't allow his people to suffer. As they talked, Pastry entered the room with letters from Duke and Huberic. Cass read the letters, and they said they would receive 20,000 silver coins. He informs that both Petra and Squale are soon to be engaged. Pastry was happy to hear that, as he remembered that it took him 2 days to get the photo of Petra because her father was too picky. Cass then mentions that they will also receive 30 gold pieces as an advance, and it's the money for guarding Petra. This is because many parties will be against the marriage, especially the ones who want to continue the conflict. Fuel mentions that even though the engagement is secret, the news could still spread, and Pastry asks if they are referring to the church. Cass confirms it and tells him that the church can't be trusted, as they will spill the beans if they get enough money. Cass mentions that he will be able to teleport Petra to the capital, but he wouldn't be able to teleport the guards. Fuel mentions that they can hire mercenaries as guards for Petra in the capital, but there could be spies among them. Since this is a tricky situation, he suggests rejecting the job, but for Cass this is the best opportunity for him to gain the trust of the 2 strongest leaders in the country, so he decides to accept the job. Pastry also thinks they should accept the job, but his motive is to build the land of sweets. Pastry then gets an idea and asks his father to find a place that is surrounded by thick walls without windows or an entry. Fuel and Cass understood his idea, which is to use the room of the sanctification ceremony as a pretense to prolong Petra's stay until the time for her engagement. After that, Pastry gave his father a receipt for the transactions with the traders. Cass scolded him when he saw that Pastry had spent a lot of money on his sweets ingredients and cut off his allowance. Following that, Cass visited Donikel Mille Huberic to escort his daughter. He also brought Pastry along with him under the pretense of accompanying them, as he couldn't reveal to him that he's using his 9-year-old son for his plan. Huberic thanked Pastry because the marriage plan was successful due to his magic. He then invited them to his carriage where his daughters were already waiting. Petra thanked him for the baked sweets, and Pastry promised to fill her mouth with his sweet stuff next time. Pastry joined them in the carriage and greeted her sister, Licorice, but she seemed sad for some reason, and Pastry was surprised that his riz didn't work on her. The journey started, and their plan was to first go to the nearby church under the pretense of a sanctification ceremony. Then they would use teleportation to go to the capital city church and use the sanctification ceremony room until the time of the engagement, while others would stand guard. On the way, Huberek was worried and counting on Cass to protect Petra. Upon arrival, Cass and Huberek surveyed the area, and just then, they were attacked. Cass fought with Huberek against the enemies. Suddenly, one of the men entered the carriage and planned to attack them, but Pastry protected the girls and managed to withstand his attacks. When another assassin tried to attack Pastry, Cass protected him in time. As a result, they defeated the assassins and forced them to retreat. After that, Pastry saw the girls' scared faces, and they went into the basement to protect Petra. As they went down, Licorice was lagging behind and she was scared, but Pastry held her hand and comforted her, and it looks like his Riz is finally working on her. After that, we learn that Petra was sad because she was always comparing herself to her twin sister. Also, she thinks that even though she behaved badly towards Pastry, his attitude towards her hasn't changed. They reach the basement, where they use Cass's spell to teleport to the capital city. Meanwhile, we see a nobleman named Armire, who had hired a group of mercenaries to kidnap Petra, offering them 10 gold coins. However, as the mercenaries left the house, they found the mission suspicious. Their leader suspected that Armire had two motives: first, to disgrace House Cattlesec, and second, to regain his noble title by saving the girl and marrying her himself. Later, we see many guards in front of the church, and Pastry is impressed by the security, as their household could never amass such a force. Following that, we see Petra is nervous about her engagement. Pastry approaches her, and she mentions that Squale seems like a wonderful person based on the photo he showed her, and Pastry is proud of being their marriage broker. Afterward, Fuel reported to Cass that even the nobles from faraway territories are coming to the event. Cass then asks Pastry to accompany Licorice until Petra's sanctification ceremony is over. Fuel whispers to him to use his Riz on her, and Cass warns him not to teach his son to be a playboy like him. Meanwhile, we see Armire, who thinks that the ceremony should be ending now and is planning to give the Duke a taste of his revenge. We then see a Central Army officer, Vezin, who is there to escort Petra. Huberek and his daughter then go with him in his carriage. Cass is glad that everything is going well, and they plan to send Licorice after they arrive at their engagement. However, he asks Fuel to keep his guard up because of the large crowd. Meanwhile, Pastry is in the reception room with Petra and her escort, Sarah. She keeps a strict guard on Licorice, making Pastry uncomfortable. Just then, Pastry hears something, and the ground below them starts to shine. A big hole appears, and Pastry and Licorice fall into the dark hole. Cass arrives and concludes that this was done by magic. He commands Fuel to explain the situation to the Duke and Huberek, and then he jumps into the hole. After that, we see Pastry waking up, realizing that they had been kidnapped by the mercenaries. He wonders why he was taken, then realizes that they were after Licorice. On the other side, Cass follows through the hole and ends up outside the church, realizing that he has lost them. Meanwhile, Licorice wakes up, and Pastry comforts her. He asks one of the mercenaries about their plan, to which he mentions that unlike the girl, Pastry will probably be killed. Pastry then puts on an act, and tells him that he will lose 200 gold coins if he kills him, as he is the son of a noble. Also, if they are kidnapped by a noble, the mercenaries can demand even more. The mercenary wonders how much they can receive, and Pastry realizes that their mastermind is a noble. Pastry then analyzes the place he's held in, and based on the condition of the mansion, thinks that it's someone who has been stripped of nobility 10 years ago. He remembers the list of threatening names for Petra's escort and deduces that this is done by the former Duke of House Armire. He then uses his magic to transcribe their location onto the ribbon, and teleports it to his father. Cass receives the message and plans for the rescue. Fuel asks him to teleport him to the Margrave as that would be faster to receive backup, and he teleports him. We then see that the kidnapper boss arrives. He tries to attack Petra, but Pastry teleports in front of him, surprising them, but he knocks him down. He is angry as they didn't receive any gold because they've kidnapped the wrong girl, and the engagement is going as planned. Pastry learns that their real intention was to kidnap Petra. The boss then plans to eliminate all witnesses and tries to attack Licorice, but just then Pastry cuts him with his sword. He then gets ready for a face-off with the boss. After that, the boss realized that Pastry had used the fallen sword to break free and defeat his underling. Suddenly, we hear some voices outside, and Cass arrives with backup. The boss realizes that he's done for, so he decides to retreat, but Pastry doesn't plan to let him go. Just then, Cass and Glakeage arrive. Pastry asks Glakeage to look after Licorice, and he corners the boss with his dad. However, the boss uses his magic to create a hole and escapes. Pastry tries to go after him, but he is stopped by Cass, who tells him not to chase blindly. Cass is glad that both his son and Licorice are fine. Fuel arrives with the knights from Cattlesec and Huberek house, and they take Licorice back home. As the captured mercenaries are taken away, Pastry asks Cass about the mastermind. Cass tells him they have captured a man who tried to escape from the back door. He calls himself Duke Lehengo Armire. Their nobility status was stripped in the war 20 years ago because they leaked information to the enemy, and Cass tells Pastry that one move by the leader can change the fate of an entire family. Just then, the knights arrive and tell them that they need to brief the incident to Margrave, who is waiting for them in his estate. Cass suddenly makes up an excuse to go after the boss with Pastry and asks Fuel to handle the report. Following this, Cass wonders where the boss might have gone, and Pastry believes that he couldn't have escaped since he had little magic left. Also, the place is surrounded by their forces, so he should have been caught. Suddenly, it hits them, and they immediately go back to the room where Pastry was captured. They find the boss hiding in the hole, and the boss threatens to kill them. Cass tries to make a move, but Pastry wants to fight the boss solo to build up more suspense for the viewers. The boss reveals his name as Strudel and plans to take Pastry as a hostage for his escape. The boss swings his sword with all his might, but Pastry blocks his attack, which also breaks Strudel's sword. Strudel is surprised, and Pastry knocks him out. Cass learns that Pastry used his magic to sabotage the sword, and realizes that's why he was being so cocky about the fight. Pastry is then worried because of this incident as it will delay his dream of building the land of sweets. A month later, we see the official engagement party of Petra and Squale. Pastry is delighted to see Petra looking happy. Duke makes an appearance and expresses his gratitude to Cass and Pastry for protecting his granddaughter-in-law. At this point, Pastry brings up some suspicions he has about the kidnapping incident. He points out that it was very odd of the mercenaries kidnapping the wrong target despite their well-calculated plan. Pastry suspects a third party's involvement, someone who holds a grudge against the Armire house and aims to prevent them from ever rising again. Duke is taken aback by these suspicions and asks if Pastry believes it's him, but Pastry dismisses the idea, suggesting it's just a child's imagination. Later on, Pastry asks Duke for financial assistance to cultivate crops in his territory, playfully hinting that his mouth may slip if he's denied. Duke realizes that he's outdone by Pastry, and agrees to help him. Thereafter, Cattlesec admits that he was the mastermind behind the incident. He clarifies that he released false information that led to the kidnapping but had no intention of endangering the two girls, and mentions he needed to reflect on his mistake. Huberek appears and expresses his gratitude to Pastry for saving his daughter. He inquires about Pastry's plan for settling down, to which Pastry responds that he's still young and hasn't found anyone yet. Cass becomes aware of Huberek's plan, but before he can intervene, Huberek asks Pastry what he thinks of his daughter Licorice. Pastry responds that he's too young, and can't even wield his Excalibur yet. Huberek doesn't give up, and asks if it's because he doesn't like his daughter, and Duke smirks realizing Pastry is trapped. Cass realizes that they've been tricked into accepting the marriage proposal. Duke enjoys the opportunity to tease Pastry, and announces the engagement to all the guests. Afterward, Licorice arrives, thanking Pastry for saving her life, and Pastry thinks she looks beautiful. Following this, Huberek toasts to marrying off both his daughters, while Duke raises a toast to Pastry becoming a part of their family as an in-law. Squale and Petra are also pleased about Pastry becoming their in-law and ask him to call them Big Bro and Big Sis. However, Pastry feels that it's a bit sudden. Later that evening, Licorice appears and asks if he doesn't like her. Pastry replies that he's happy to be engaged to her, and she shares her homemade cookies with him. He tells her that they are delicious, making her happy. He resolves to protect her smile and build a country of sweets with her. Afterward, Cass tells his wife that he has something important to share. Seeing him tense, she wonders if he blew off some money for purchase and assures him it's fine. However, he informs her that they have a new daughter in their family. Agnes is shocked and immediately thinks he's having an affair. He tells her that he couldn't help it, and she asks if the girl is pretty. He explains that she's very pretty and comes from a high noble family, and she also has a twin. Agnes finally loses it, thinking Cass is building a harem. He apologizes for not consulting her before accepting the girl into their family and mentions that Pastry agreed to it as well, believing she would make a good match for their son. Agnes then realizes Cass was talking about Pastry and walks away. Just then, Pastry arrives to inquire about the situation, and Cass tells him that it will take her at least a month to get over this, but Agnes on the other hand is happy about it and can't wait to have a new daughter. We then see Retesh receiving the news about the engagement of House Morteln with the Huberek family. She's shocked that the poor village received a proposal from a high noble house and spills her coffee in surprise. The servant suggests that this might be temporary due to the kidnapping incident, and they may cancel the engagement in 2 or 3 years. However, Retesh thinks differently. She points out that when Cass came 20 years ago, it took several years for their first harvest, and yet they stopped their wheat production to plant beans for 3 years. This resulted in beans fertilizing the land and increasing wheat production. She believes that Pastry is behind it and sees his great potential. After all, he was the one who negotiated with her for the bandit reward. She thinks that Lord Huberek has also recognized Pastry's potential and believes she's beaten. Back in Morteln village, we see Pastry setting down some boxes, and his friends are curious about what he ordered. He mentions that it's something he obtained from Duke and his grandson after they promised to support him in developing his land during the engagement party. The boxes contain small plants known as pseudo-acacia, and Lumi wonders if he plans to make a pie with them. He explains that they can't eat or make anything from these plants, but they would grow even on barren land and produce nectar. Pastry explains that this nectar will be similar to honey, and he could use it to make many sweets. They wonder how they will grow the plants since they need water and soil, which their territory lacks, and it will cause the plants to dry out. But Pastry has a plan. He intends to build a large reservoir that will hold a huge amount of water, and he has chosen this unused part of the land for it. After that, we see Fuel giving a budget recap for the past year, and it's the first time they've received profits. Cass is glad that his hard work is finally paying off and believes that his son is a blessing from the goddess. Fuel then mentions that he has both good and bad news. The good news is that they have over 40 people willing to move to the new village, Lolate, and most of them are refugees who have been victims of bandit attacks. Additionally, 5 people have joined them as retainers based on the news about the kidnapping incident, and Glakage is currently training them. Cass is glad to hear this news and believes it will help their territory flourish. The bad news is that he heard that Pastry is up to something with his friends. We then see Pastry and his friend standing in front of a huge rock. Pastry then uses the magic he copied from Strudel to put a hole on the rock. He believes that his magic will work and begins to dance around. He then continues to use his punching magic to clear away the boulders. Lumi and Mark are amazed that he was able to do this on his own. Additionally, the bottom and walls are hardened for the reservoir. Pastry plans to plant the seedlings around the reservoir since it will rain soon, and the collected water will also be used, which will double the effect of the plant's growth. If all goes well, he can soon start building his dreamland of sweets. Lost in his sweet dream, Mark and Lumi ask him to snap out of it, and he's shocked to see his father, Cass. Cass initially thought that Pastry was demolishing the mountain, but thinks this is on another level. He becomes furious and punishes the 3 kids for their actions. Later, we see Ritesh still thinking about the engagement of the Morteln family and mentions that she would have done the same as Huberek if she had a daughter. She's upset about how Huberek and Duke aligned with the Morteln family without involving her. Her servant jokes and suggests that maybe she should marry him herself. She mentions it would have been possible if she were 10 years younger, but then thinks of an idea and plans to use it. A month later, we see villagers praising Pastry for creating 3 water reservoirs within a month when it usually takes months to build just one. Pastry then arrives with his friends and is glad that they've completed planting the seeds. He hopes they can make honey, and his friends can't wait to taste his sweets. Just then, Josie approaches him with a letter and wonders if it's a love letter from Licorice. Pastry learns that it's from Ritesh inviting him to a tea tasting party, and she wants him to experience her extravagant taste, while Pastry wonders what kind of plot development she is planning. After that, we see the new recruit Nicolo, who is overwhelmed with the paperwork. Fuel tells him that they're busy because of the little devil, referring to Pastry. Just then, Pastry arrives, having overheard his comment, and reminds Fuel that the land belongs to his father, so the responsibility falls on him. Fuel retorts that it was Pastry who started putting holes in the ground, increasing their workload, and suggests Nicolo take his complaint to him. Following this, Pastry inquires about the whereabouts of his dad because he received an invitation from Ritesh. Suddenly, his dad appears from behind and informs Pastry that he has already heard the news. He tells Pastry that they will discuss it later, as they have an important guest, and that's when Licorice shows up. Pastry is happy to see her, and Fuel teases him. He learns that she will be staying there for a while, and Pastry is nervous about the plot development. After that, we see Lumi rushing to Mark to inform him about Pastry's fiancé, but Mark is already aware of it. She tells him that she heard rumors that Licorice is a sexy older woman who has Pastry wrapped around her fingers. We then see Pastry taking Licorice to his special place, a large kitchen where he makes his sweets. The scene then shifts to Huberek Castle, where a man asks Huberek about sending his daughter to Morteln village. We learn that Huberek already suspected that Ritesh is after Pastry, and it's due to this reason that he sent her there. He planned it so that Licorice will accompany Pastry to the ceremony, making it difficult for Ritesh to make any move on Pastry. Also, he wants his daughter to be safe as there is a threat that the neighboring territory might attack. We then see Pastry making samples for a gift that he plans to bring to the ceremony. Licorice notices the bonkas, and Pastry mentions that they're precious to him as he had spent all his allowance to get them. He then continues to prepare the dessert, and Licorice is mesmerized by its aroma. He then drops his sweet liquid onto the plate and calls it hard candy. As finishing touches, he gives them different shapes. Although Licorice recognizes some of the animal shapes, she fails to recognize a plane and thinks that it's a bird. She mentions that seeing how pretty they are, she doesn't want to eat them, but Pastry tells her she has to because that's what candy is for. Meanwhile, outside the kitchen, his mother and sister are eavesdropping on them, hoping to see some plot development. Lumi is trying to keep them quiet, while Mark wonders what he is doing here. Pastry then pours the candy syrup onto the bonka fruits, and Licorice thinks they're beautiful. He asks her to try it out, and she loves it. He then goes to the door and opens it, causing his mom and sister to fall. He confronts them about it, but they make up an excuse and run off, leaving Mark and Lumi behind. He mentions that he planned to give the dessert to them, but since they eavesdropped, he won't give it to them and plans to give them to his dad and Fuel instead. We then see Cass and Fuel discussing the tea tasting ceremony. Since it's mainly for young singles, they plan to assign Nicolo as Pastry's bodyguard. Cass is confident about his son and thinks he can handle himself. However, he's more worried about Retesh making any moves on Licorice. The scene then shifts to the ceremony, where Pastry arrives with Licorice. They are all amazed by the decorations, and they think it's even better than the royal capital. Pastry mentions that it's one of the greatest castles in the south, also known as the Pirate Castle due to its proximity to the ocean. Pastry then notices that Retesh has framed the photo he had gifted her, and thinks she has intentionally put it there. Just then, Retesh's servant, Coton Engels, arrives and welcomes them. He then introduces Pastry and his fiancée to the crowd. Pastry then gifts the crowd with his hard candy, and they try it out. Everyone loves it, and when Coton tries it, he enjoys the sensation of Pastry's sweet liquid melting inside his mouth. Pastry then tells the crowd that there are more samples left, and he would love to send them for free through the merchants, but asks them not to subject those merchants to sugar taxes. It wouldn't be fair if merchants were charged every time he sent them gifts. Just then, Retesh arrives hearing his proposal, and wants to learn more about it. She tells him that all business talks need to go through her, but Pastry clarifies that they were just discussing gifts. She suggests they discuss it in private, and Pastry goes with her, leaving Licorice in the care of Nicolo and Sarah. Afterward, we see them in a private room, and Pastry asks if she's worried that he will harm her because of the guards. But Retesh tells him that if she were worried, she'd have 10 times more guards, considering he is a magic user. Pastry then takes out his hard thing, and asks her to put it in her mouth. "I meant the candy." She tastes his hard candy, and finds it delicious. He tells her that he plans to produce all the ingredients in his territory, which shocks her. He explains that he'll be able to mass-produce the candies in 3 years, and he wants her support. She thinks that Pastry is planning something big for the future, but she can't seem to figure it out. She agrees to assist him but only regarding the candies, and Pastry thanks her. Meanwhile, in the castle hall, Coton mentions that Pastry has been the talk of the party and suggests that he will receive many offers to build his harem. This upsets Licorice, and Sarah and Nicolo try to comfort her, but she decides to leave and wants to go home. On the other side, Pastry is walking with Retesh and is glad to have her support. Retesh then asks him about Licorice and wonders if he loves her. He tries to avoid the question, but she wraps her arm around him, and holds him down with her giant assets. She tells him that she won't let go until he admits his true feelings. Just then, Licorice arrives and is shocked to see them in that position. Licorice runs away, and it appears that Retesh's plan has succeeded. Pastry goes after her and finds her standing outside. He tries to explain to her that in Retesh's eyes, he's just a 9-year-old kid, but Licorice is worried about him leaving her when he gets more girls in his harem. She mentions that she's not as confident as her sister and lacks communication skills. Pastry tells her that he likes her just the way she is, and his feelings for her will only grow stronger. He asks her to wait for him and teleports away. After some time, he returns with a bonka sweet and tells her it's a bit different from what she had before. He asks her to taste his sweet with her mouth as he has specially prepared it for her. Licorice tries it out and loves how the sweet spreads in her mouth. It reminds her of the first time she had it with Pastry, and tears of joy come out. He tells her that this sweet has many names as it's easy to make and produced in many places. The names include Toffee Apple, Apple of Heaven, and Apple of Love. He asks her to put her trust in him, and he will make her happy. She thanks Pastry, and as they were about to develop some plot, they get interrupted by Sarah and Nicolo. Sarah is there to take Licorice back, and Nicolo is impressed by Pastry's way with the ladies. He calls him the gigolo of Morteln, and tells him that he's such a womanizer. Pastry is furious and tells him that he will double his workload when they get back home. Nicolo thinks Pastry is joking, but Pastry decides to increase it to 3 times, and Nicolo starts begging for mercy. Sarah is glad that Licorice is happy now and gives a serious stare to Pastry. After that, we see Pastry's mom overjoyed with her son's return, and she hugs him tightly. She tells Licorice that she noticed Pastry making something and left in a hurry, so she thinks he has made something for her. Pastry realizes this, and his mother drags him away to learn more about it in detail. Nicolo thinks that Pastry's mother is even harder to handle for him than Retesh, and Licorice laughs about it. Later, we see Pastry, who is exhausted after having to put up with his mother for 2 hours. Fuel offers him tea and sees the papers with the photo. Pastry tells him that those are hard candy wrapper leftovers which they used to wrap candies while he listened to his mother talk. Fuel is shocked to see his photo with Retesh and wonders why he used these as candy wrappers. Pastry mentions that it's a little payback to Retesh for messing with him. After that, we see Retesh, who is angry with Pastry for giving candies wrapped in those papers among nobles. Due to this, a rumor has spread that she's into young boys, and they have received many proposals from young boys from different places. She is furious with Pastry and wants him to pay for his actions. The scene shifts to Huberek Castle, and they have received news that their neighboring territory, Margrave of Lutterud, has made their move. They think that Huberek's engagement with Katelsek will enhance his power, so Lutterud plans to attack them first. Huberek learns that their troops consist of over 30,000 men, and they may not be able to defend against that number. He asks his men to reach out to the Duke for help. Meanwhile, we see Pastry counting his profits from the hard candy and the marriage photos. He takes 4 coins for himself as his reward. He then plans to purchase 100 goats, and use its milk and cheese for his sweets. Fuel mentions that they initially planned to raise goats, but due to the condition of the territory, they dropped the idea. However, Pastry believes that now, as their territory has improved, they can use this change to raise livestock. Fuel wonders if they will use chicken and other animals for food, but Pastry's plan is to increase their numbers further, especially chickens, which give them eggs that he can use for making sweets. Fuel thinks this kid judges everything based on sweets and tells him that they don't have enough manpower to do so. Pastry decides to think about it later and asks Fuel to open his mouth to taste his sweet liquid. He calls it sweet sorghum. Fuel tastes it and thinks it's too sweet, and Pastry mentions that it's a prototype for sugar. His goal is to create a sweet production shop in Morteln. Fuel thinks it quite a goal, but asks him to watch out for his father's wrath if he tries anything funny. Later, we see Pastry and his friends building something, and Licorice wonders what it could be. He tells her that it's a prototype for a juicer, and they complete building it. He tries to show her the demo, but Mark can't reach the handle, and Pastry realizes that he miscalculated the size. Mark asks Lumi to get on his back to reach the handle. She climbs on his back, and he thinks she's too heavy. They break the handle when trying to pull it and fall down. Pastry thinks that the mechanism of the prototype was correct, but it lacked strength and thinks about using metal next time. Licorice then tells him that she has seen a similar juicer in Huberek for making wine, and it requires 2 people turning a handle. Pastry then thinks to use the same tool and plans to get one. Lumi thinks that they got hurt for no reason, and Pastry offers her to be his sweet taster and she forgives him. Pastry then runs off to talk about buying the juicer with his dad and Fuel. Pastry is happy to see that his dad has returned, but Cass informs him that war is about to begin. The war will start with Huberek and Lutterud territory, and Pastry is shocked to hear this news. Meanwhile, in the Lutterud camp, they receive news that Huberek hasn't received any reinforcements from the Duke. Lutterud thinks that Huberek may have withdrawn his request when he heard that they have only 10,000 men and plans to take care of it without involving the Duke to maintain his dignity. Just then, a soldier informs Lutterud that the Duke's grandson is in the territory for a visit, and he has an idea. Afterwards, we see Pastry cleaning his kitchen, and Licorice notices that he's worried about the war. She thinks that instead of spending time waging war, people should use that time to make delicious sweets like Pastry, and he thinks that he chose the right girl for his harem. Then he tells her that today they will get some goats, and he plans to make a cheesecake made out of goat milk. However, Pastry learns that the goats have been snatched away by another baron. The peddler tells them that he tried to reject them, but they threatened to kill him, so he had to obey. They learn that it was bought by Baron Lunsbach, who is known for picking on new nobles. Fuel mentions that if they had strong support from a noble house, they would never mess with them. Cass mentions that they are not officially tied to Huberek yet, so they can't ask for his help. He believes that this incident has occurred due to the war between Huberek and Lutterud, so at the moment, they can't do anything about it. Pastry is furious and decides to go to the Baron to talk about this, but Cass stops him and tells him that it's common for territories to secure resources as the war is about to begin, and Lunsbach's territory is closer to the war zone, so they would have priority. Cass tells him that he can try to get them back after the war is over. Pastry is sad by this setback, but then Fuel tells him that there's another way they can get prioritized access to the food, and that is to go to war as reinforcements for Huberek. Pastry is determined to get his goats back at any cost, and his desire to make sweets is so strong that it seems he transformed into a Super Saiyan. After that, we see Pastry going with Cass, Nicolo, and Glakage as reinforcements, and they have also recruited 8 other villagers. Mark wishes to go with them, but Lumi thinks he'll only mess things up. Mark's dad tells him to protect the village in Pastry's absence. Licorice is worried, but Agnes comforts her, while Pastry hopes to recover his goats to continue making his sweets. Meanwhile, in the Huberek castle, Petra wonders why Squale is more interested in her photo when she's right there with him. Since he can't tell her that he's been thinking of using it to build his forearm muscles, he tells her it's because she's too cute, and Petra is flattered. Just then, Huberek arrives and teases him for flirting with his daughter. Suddenly, they receive news that the Lutterud army has made its move with 10,000 men. Huberek thinks the initial report of 30,000 men may be false and decides to face them with his own army. He plans to send Squale to his first battle as the front-line defense, and he accepts it. Meanwhile, in the Lutterud camp, they receive a report that their army is ready to advance. One of his men is concerned that the soldiers are exhausted and thinks it's reckless to continue. However, Lutterud has already considered this and has a different plan. His current objective is to separate Huberek and the Duke. He knows that Huberek will send Squale for his first battle to gain Duke's favor when they are victorious. Lutterud plans to kill Squale, which will anger the Duke and end Huberek's relationship with him, and then Huberek won't be able to strengthen his army, and that's when Lutterud will attack him. After that, we see Squale is nervous about his first battle and hopes for a victory. Meanwhile, in the Huberek castle, Pastry arrives with his dad as reinforcements. Huberek thanks them, and Pastry accidentally mentions it's for the goats. However, he corrects himself and explains that he's here because his fiancée's family is in danger. Huberek briefs them about the current situation, and Pastry thinks their number is small. Huberek describes the enemy's position, and Cass senses that something is wrong. Pastry is amazed by his dad's instinct and wonders why the enemy is maintaining a defensive position when they are the ones launching the attack. Cass deduces the location they plan to attack, and Huberek becomes tense because that's where he sent Squale to defend in his first battle. They realize Squale is in danger and decide to go save him. Meanwhile, Squale receives a report that they have spotted the enemy, and they number only 20. He decides to attack and leads his army, but they cannot locate the enemy. One of the soldiers informs him that they are approaching from behind, and there are more than 20 of them. The enemy attacks and breaches their rear defenses. Squale is shocked and tries to lead his troops into the forest for cover, but they spot the enemy emerging from there as well. Squale realizes that he's in danger. On the other side, we see Glakage telling Cass that the main army is delayed. Cass asks Nicolo to handle the main army and rushes to Squale's aid with Pastry and Glakage. We then see Squale engaged in combat with the enemy forces. He orders his men to retreat, but they find themselves surrounded. Just then, a few arrows fly over, killing the enemies, and Cass appears on the scene, attacking the enemy. Pastry appears from above, and tells Squale that they're here to support him in his first battle, and Squale is relieved that he's saved. After that, Squale expresses his gratitude for saving him from danger, and we see all the enemies have been defeated. Meanwhile, Ludorud is shocked by the news of Morteln joining Huberek's forces, and anticipates that Duke will send reinforcements again. He realizes that his plan has failed and becomes furious. On the other side, Huberek is relieved to see Squale safe and apologizes to him for putting him in danger. He expresses his gratitude to Cass and Pastry for rescuing Squale and mentions that Ludorud's army has withdrawn for the time being. Huberek announces his intention to reward all the warriors and praises Squale for his fierce fight, though Squale feels he did nothing. Huberek suggests that Squale should rest, and as he walks away, he encounters Petra. She's relieved to see that he's okay, and offers to escort him to his room, but he prefers to be alone, and Huberek worries about his condition. Since his first battle was so harsh, it seems to have traumatized him, but Cass believes that he needed this experience as he has to manage the royal capital army. Petra is concerned for him and wonders how to comfort him. Cass turns to Pastry and asks how he consoled Mark after the bandit attack incident. Pastry recalls that he made Mark a bonka pie. Cass then suggests that Pastry help Petra comfort Squale. Pastry has an idea and asks Cass to gather the necessary ingredients. Cass realizes that Pastry wants to make sweets but agrees to help this time. Pastry then asks for bonka, and Cass wonders if he's making bonka pie again, but Pastry has something else in his mind. Afterwards, we see Pastry preparing the sweet while thinking about Squale's feelings. He realizes that Squale is hurt and blames himself for his inability. Pastry hopes to bring a smile to Squale's face with his dessert. Meanwhile, Huberek is celebrating their victory with a toast and a party. During the party, Squale overhears people talking about an outsider boy stealing the glory, which upsets him. Cass tries to console him, but Squale believes their words hold some truth. Huberek joins them and shares that he also faced challenges during his first battle. He encourages Squale to take pride in his accomplishments. Squale thanks him but still feels responsible for the soldiers' sacrifices. Just then, Pastry arrives at the party, congratulates Huberek on their victory, and presents a dish he prepared in his kitchen. When Nicolo opens the lid, a delightful aroma fills the air. Pastry slices a piece and invites Squale to try it. He tells him that it's called Tarte Tatin, made with bonka. Squale tastes the bonka sweet and finds it delicious. He asks Pastry about the name, and Pastry explains that it's named after the Tatin sisters, renowned for making tarts. Pastry narrates an incident about the sisters forgetting to put the dough while baking, leading to the creation of this sweet. He emphasizes that this sweet was born from a baking mistake and that the sisters didn't let failure define them. Pastry tells Squale that he thinks of this sweet whenever he experiences a baking failure and reminds himself to move forward despite setbacks. Petra joins the conversation, and tells him that he's not a failure as he has protected the promise he made to her to return home, and he's the right person to lead his people because he values the sacrifices of his subordinates over celebrating victory. Squale begins to cheer up and expresses gratitude to Petra and Pastry. He decides to learn from this experience and grow stronger. Squale invites Petra to join him in the garden to eat the sweets together, and also for potential plot development. They leave together, and Squale is much happier. Cass remarks that everyone must overcome their first battle trauma individually, and Huberek shares that he had a similar experience when he was young. Pastry also mentions that he faced a similar situation when he was younger, even though he's still young. Huberek thanks Pastry and offers to grant him any request. Pastry has something in mind that he needs Huberek to assist him with. After that, we see Pastry back home, where his friends are shocked by the amount of goods he has acquired. He hands Licorice the letter from her father and informs Fuel that his father stayed behind to teach Lunsbadge a lesson for messing with their economy. Pastry explains that their plan is to purchase all the necessary resources, and his father is handling the negotiations. Just then, his father arrives to collect him and explains that the negotiations have concluded, but they need Pastry's help to transport the resources. Later, Fuel and the others are shocked to see the numerous goats and horses, and Cass reveals that they purchased everything before Lunsbadge arrived, and now he will feel the taste to be outdone by a small village. Afterward, Pastry receives wine-making equipment from Huberek, which they plan to use as a juicer. Later, we learn that Huberek has requested Licorice to accompany Petra to the royal capital during the summer. However, they are struggling to select an appropriate dress for her since their territory lacks tailors for nobles. They ask Pastry to go and purchase a dress in her size, as he is her fiancé, and later we see Pastry uses his magic to show an image of Licorice to the tailor for dress sizing. A month later, Pastry prepares a cheesecake for Licorice, who writes a letter to her father expressing her happiness with her stay at the Morteln village. On the other hand, Huberek feels lonely without her. After that, Pastry goes to wake up his sister, who wants to have his cake on the bed. However, she is surprised to see Licorice and becomes embarrassed. Following this, we see Pastry preparing another dessert, and Licorice asks him what he's making. Pastry whispers his plans to her, leaving her surprised. This is where the video ends. Hope you liked my recap. Thanks for watching.